Thank you, Maddie, and welcome to Johnson Consulting Conversations. I'm Lacy Robinson, Senior Business Consultant for Johnson Consulting Group, and I'm thrilled to be with you today. Your customer surveys hold more power than you think, and today we're going behind the scenes of the customer survey process to explore why we ask the questions that we do, what the data reveals about your business performance, and most importantly, how to use those insights to drive growth to your funeral home or cemetery. And I'm joined today by someone who has truly transformed how funeral professionals understand and leverage customer feedback. Taylor Clifford is the program manager for client engagement at J3 Tech Solutions, the technology division of Johnson Consulting Group. And since joining Johnson Consulting Group in 2021, Taylor has achieved something remarkable, increasing client engagement from 45% to 96% and improving satisfaction scores from 2.7 to 4.7 in just 6 months. Taylor manages over 2,000 active users on our Performance Tracker X platform and orchestrates integrations across multiple systems in the death care space. But what really sets her apart is her background. Before entering funeral service, Taylor spent years in luxury hospitality at the JW Marriott Camelback Inn, where she mastered the art of creating exceptional experiences during high stakes moments. And that foundation has proven invaluable as she now helps funeral homes serve families during life's most difficult transitions. Taylor, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Lacy. I'm going to have you introduce me if I ever need a job interview or anything like that. It's going to be a talk to this
Well,
lady.
hopefully you won't ever need that.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm not insinuating anything, I promise. I'm very happy here. But yeah, I mean, I've been with Johnson Consulting for, like you said, since 2021, so 4 years now. And I'm loving it here and definitely expanded my knowledge of not only surveys and customer feedback, but customer experience in general. So yeah.
Thank you. And I want to start with your story because I think it's fascinating. What drew you to funeral service?
So honestly, the pandemic had a big factor in, me choosing to even leave JW Marriott because once I find a place that I like, I stay there. And I really loved what I was doing in event management with JW Marriott. And I was growing. I was actually geared up to go and be a nationwide trainer for JW before the pandemic hit. So it was really it was really sudden, obviously, but when the pandemic hit, events in-person gatherings, obviously the first thing to shut down. So from there, I actually remained furloughed with the hotel for a while in hopes that the pandemic would not last as long as it did. But then I actually made the decision to kind of pivot. And instead of going into event management, I just kind of brought those same set of skills internally within a corporate environment. So I really focused in on project management. I got certified, and then I actually went into surveys. So I worked with Beyond Feedback, which is actually a survey company, and they focus more on internal employee surveys. And obviously, what we do here is a lot of customer surveys where I got to combine my love of working with customers, of having that CX background, and then also the knowledge that I gained in creating and working in surveys and data management. So obviously the draw to funeral service in general is just the empathetic nature of what everyone does. And I mean, I had no idea, right? It's unless you're in this profession and you actually know what it's like and what it's like to work with the people in it, there's no way you can have the right amount of appreciation for it. So I'm so happy to be here with this profession and with this amazing group of people that I get to interact with.
Aw. Well, funeral service has welcomed you with open arms, and you have a beautiful perspective on the empathetic heart that funeral service professionals have. And I think there's a lot to be learned from many people like yourself who did pivot during the pandemic. So, congratulations on making such a successful pivot during that time period. I am curious, how has your hospitality background shaped your approach to client engagement in a profession dealing with families who are in crisis?
Yeah, so even though I personally don't deal with the families one-on-one that are in crisis, all of my clients do, right? So everyone who is a current Performance Tracker X user, they are all either the executives or the funeral directors or the general managers who work directly with those families on a daily basis. I mean, hospitality really prepared me for it in ways that, I wasn't even, consciously aware of until you asked me this question and I started to think about it. But the sense of knowing that every client has way more important things going on in their lives and their jobs, in managing those families, and that's just way more important than anything that I could be expecting of them or asking them from, right? So overall, it's my job to make sure that I'm making my clients' lives easier. I mean, not just externally, but internally here with Johnson Consulting Group too. And I think a really easy way to do that is just to remind myself, hey, these people are dealing with families, they're dealing with managing all these people in crisis. And that's just so much more impactful than, me waiting to hear back from them on, some onboarding details or whatever it may be. So it's definitely helped having the hospitality background.
No doubt. Now, I want to talk about the data itself. The 2025 Trends Report analyzes over 113,000 records from funeral homes across the country, which is incredible. I want you to walk us through how that process, or how you process that massive amount of data that is extracted to make sure that you output meaningful insights for our funeral home clients.
Yeah. So obviously in Performance Tracker acts on a much smaller scale than analyzing the entire profession as a whole and all, 113,000 of those records. You're just looking at your individual business. And there's a lot of modular reporting that's kind of just like a static report that we can create in a dashboard that is going to be the most efficient way for you to read your data, right? But when you're looking at it as an entire industry on such a wide scale, you really have the duty to dive deeper into that data and report things that those static reports aren't going to be showing you. Not just from a benchmarking perspective, because it is so interesting to look at it as the industry in full versus just your organization or your funeral home, but more so just in the sense of we owe this to the profession in whole, which is why we share that Trends and Insights report every single year. We don't charge for it. We share it with clients, with non-clients, with competitors, really anyone who is going to find interest in that data. We also have the benefit, my team here at J3 Tech Solutions, we have unfettered access to all of that data. So we see it in its most raw form, and we can analyze it and take trends from it that not necessarily someone who doesn't have a background in data would be able to kind of identify. So it allows our data nerds to nerd out a little, as I always like to say, and they can really investigate any trends that might be of interest to the profession in general. Last year, I think that's the Trends and Insights report that I'm most proud of, that I think my team is most proud of. Allison Dunn, she's our director of operations, partners primarily with our configuration specialist, Derek Kaufman, and they really are the ones, with that data knowledge, and they dive into it. And then we all work together as a team, just the entire J3 Tech team then improve it over time. So it's really impressive the way that they can manage all of that.
It's an impressive and sophisticated process, and we welcome any and all data nerds at Johnson Consulting Group. And with all of that data flowing in, I'm sure you have seen some surprises. What's been the most surprising shift that you have observed in funeral home performance metrics since you have started in this role?
Yeah, so I came on to Performance Tracker to J3 Tech Solutions at a very unique time. It was right when they were transitioning, when we were transitioning from fully paper surveys to the digital age. So now we do email and text message surveys, and then default to a paper survey if funeral homes are still wanting that, because we do have a lot of legacy clients that have been on the system forever, and they just know the value of that paper response. But we were in the middle of that transition when I came in, and I got to help design the digital survey and decide what kind of performance metrics we need to be looking at other than the ones that we've always been looking at, right? So something that just completely blew me away was the response rates. And that's something that should not be taken for granted by anyone listening to this, anyone within our profession. I have a background with a survey company that did consumer surveys, that did employee surveys for every other profession imaginable, hospitality or auto sales or anything, Target, Walmart, all of that. And the average response rate with any other industry would be anywhere between 5 to 10% for consumer surveys. In the profession of funeral and cemetery, we know that has just been completely blown out of the water. I would love to credit it all to Performance Tracker, but I think the real credit is due to the funeral directors and the people who are on the ground with the families, because those interactions and the services that are provided are so meaningful that it's really encouraging for families to even take the time to complete a survey. Especially, our survey Performance Tracker, it's very detailed. It takes anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes for a family to complete it, depending on the amount of open-ended responses that they choose to give. But that's not an insignificant amount of time. It obviously brings up harsh emotions and going back to the day that you had to bury your loved one and revisit that, just so you can share your experience and your feedback with a funeral home. So the response rates, when you put it that way, it's not surprising, but they really blew me out of the water, because what our averages are anywhere between 35 and 45%. So far this year, I believe we're at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on the 2024 report, obviously, but for 2025 data, I think we're at 39.7% as an average. And we have some clients who are like in the 70s this year. So it's insane. And I think that it's really a testament to how meaningful the experiences are that are being cultivated.
That's awesome. And I want to dive into something that every funeral home thinks about, they struggle with, and that's getting families to actually respond to the surveys. And you mentioned other industries that do struggle with perhaps survey fatigue. What strategies does Performance Tracker X maintain in order to maintain high engagement rates and combat that survey fatigue that may exist?
Yeah, there's a few things. Obviously, raw data collection and making sure that data entry is all up to snuff, that you really have the email collected, the mobile number collected. I believe one of the stats that you sent over to me that's in our Trends and Insights report is that 55% is what we're at for email capturing with the 2024 data. That's so not where it needs to be. It should be 90% at least. And that's what I always tell people, and the expectation that I set that managers should be striving for whenever I onboard a new client or have a training with an existing Performance Tracker client. Collecting those emails is key, especially when there's a reason why we went digital, right? It's going to be in real time feedback they're getting from families. You don't have to wait for someone to fill out a paper survey, mail it back, have it returned to the Johnson Consulting corporate office, and then entered in to the system, which is just crazy to me that that was the system for so long, just because, so much could change in that amount of time. They could have a totally different outlook on their experience by the time that survey is returned to the funeral home. So one of the things is definitely mentioning the survey verbally to families on site. That's always a tip that I give my funeral directors. I actually have a script, a template that I send them, and they can obviously change it and make it more natural, however feels most comfortable to them, because it can be a very uncomfortable thing in any industry, asking for customer feedback, especially when you're in the funeral profession and it is such a sensitive nature, and it's really it's really just intrinsically embedded into funeral directors to be there for their families and serve their families, and that's what they want to do, right? They don't care about sales, they don't care about anything other than being there for their families. And it's hard to take a moment to ask them for something in return. But when you're being thanked by a family, that's just a great opportunity to mention how impactful their feedback is to you as an individual, to your funeral. And that extra touch point definitely makes a huge difference between that 70% response rate or, like a 20% response rate. So yeah, data entry and then verbally mentioning, I think, are the two most important things.
Those are excellent strategies, and I appreciate the suggested dialogue that you share with funeral directors for them to convey how impactful that feedback is to not only them personally, but also to the entire funeral home. Now, one thing that did catch my attention in the data is that the response rates declining as case volume increases. Why do you think this inverse relationship exists?
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's not something that's uncommon to other industries as well, right? I think that many times when a funeral director or cemetery service counselor has a larger caseload, more families to serve, more on their plate, they often become complacent about the customer service side of what they're providing, and not in terms of they are caring any less or giving any less meaningful service to their families, but I think that the processes tend to fall below the wayside a little bit more. So entering those email addresses and mobile numbers, being sure to mention the survey to families, like what I was just saying. I think that processes like that can fall to the wayside when a funeral director is overwhelmed by a large caseload. And that's really not coming from me, because I don't have the it is my opinion, but it's also I don't have that funeral director experience under my belt, right? I come from hospitality and surveys, and I know all of that, but it comes from me interviewing arrangers over time. And I've done a lot of interviews for my webinar series, Tea Time with Taylor, as well as a lot of trainings with arrangers. And I've just kind of heard from them on it. And I think that's definitely where, the gap lies between the two.
I think your experience of speaking to thousands of funeral directors since 2021 is invaluable as we look at why that gap exists. I do want to talk about text messaging for a moment. The SMS surveys account for 28.7% of completions. What makes text messaging particularly effective for funeral home surveys?
I think the convenience is really the most prevalent factor there. I would say that the digital age as well, with as I'm even just thinking about it right now, and this is not a note I had for this question, but I think COVID might have impacted it as well, because younger families were losing loved ones. It's not always someone who's 90 losing their 90-year-old spouse, and I think that the younger generations identify with text messaging. I'm a millennial. I text all the time. I love when my clients tell me, hey, just text me with a question. That's really convenient. And I think that it's put right in front of your face. It's also noteworthy that Performance Tracker X, we only send a one-time text message. So with email, there are 3 touch points for getting the initial email and then 2 reminders. But then the text message is only one time. So that 28.7% is actually pretty impressive on the text messaging side of things. And I really think it's just the age that we're in now. Yeah, that's all I've got on that one.
Well, if you say it's impressive, I have no reason to doubt it because you're the survey queen at Johnson Consulting. But something that's really excites me about the survey process is not just the feedback, but it's also the lead generation. With 9.5% of surveys generating leads, how can funeral homes better leverage the survey process, not just for the feedback, but as a business development tool?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak and brag a little bit about Performance Tracker X on this one, because I think the product that Johnson Consulting Group offers for surveys is, tenfold. And I'm completely biased in saying that, but just my unbiased opinion also is our program has features that other ones just don't offer. Things like Google Promote, that's going to ultimately help with improving your search engine optimization. And so many companies are even just gearing full products towards search engine optimization. And this just happens to be an extra complementary feature on Performance Tracker X. So things like that are definitely helping leverage, an expansion of business development over time. One thing I am going to recommend is to anyone who is interested in this question a little bit more, and really how you can utilize the tool, I would say to revisit one of my past Tea Time webinars in September of 2025. So just recently, I had Vince Roberge, who's one of our senior business consultants, on with me, and he spoke to the importance of leveraging the survey results to create marketing initiatives and strengthen your relationships that you have with organizations that recommend you, like churches and hospice and all of those things. So he did an amazing job, and that's obviously directly from that consulting perspective. So definitely watch that. But I would say Performance Tracker X is just beats everyone in this category of trying to leverage customer surveys to improve your business.
Now, I want to talk about something that keeps funeral home owners up at night, and that's the silent detractors, families who have had a negative experience, but they do not vocalize their concerns. What patterns in the data help you identify those silent detractors?
Yeah, so I think at the individual funeral home level, so when you're just when you're one operation, or you even have multiple rooftops and you're looking at your organization within your dashboard or performance tracker, I always highly encourage managers to review their survey invitation data. So that's not something where there's a module report on. It's something where you would have to go and pull your data and kind of analyze it yourself to see, hey, which families in this month, and I do recommend doing it monthly, have responded to the survey and which ones have not. And then I even cross-match that with Google reviews or Yelp, so online social reviews in general, to identify which families have been silent so far. That is something that kind of analysis and that work with your team, because once you have that list, you can have a meeting with your team and say, hey, let's dive a little bit deeper into those cases and say, hey, thinking back, what was that experience like from your family? Was there anything in the details that might have signaled a reason why they wouldn't want to get back to us? Or anything like that. I definitely don't recommend harassing your families by any means in terms of, hey, can you complete the survey? Can you complete the survey? I actually had a couple of locations who were doing that and having their funeral directors call. And I'm like, we already have enough touch points. If you want to call them about something else and then mention the survey, I think that's okay. But don't just call them and kind of dig that into them, because that in itself could turn into a silent detractor, right? They could not want to give their feedback, and then they could go tell their friends, hey, this place is awful, don't go there. They harass you after you've lost your loved one. So I mean, just reviewing those cases, that's a really big thing. I've actually implemented that for a couple of organizations that I work with. So if anyone on this call or watching the recording is a Performance Tracker X client, reach out to me. I can definitely help you design something like that operationally for your team and help you get those invitations sorted out.
I appreciate that you do the cross analysis with Google and Yelp. I can only imagine how even more insightful that feedback is for funeral home owners. One of the most intriguing parts or patterns in the report is that perceived value consistently scores lower than overall performance across all case types. Are families essentially telling us that they're secretly disappointed customers, they're satisfied about the service, but they're not convinced of the value?
So, I mean, part of hacking excellence in customer service, just in general, is how your families or your customers perceive the value of the experience that they had with your business. That's why we have that question on the survey that asks directly about the value in comparison to the price that the family felt that they received. So I always say in my trainings that in a perfect world, and this is actually something that I take from John DeJulius too, who is kind of the godfather of customer experience, and who the Johnson Consulting Group bases their philosophies on when it comes to customer service. But in a perfect world, that high value is going to be noticed by families regardless of the price paid, right? Like they're going to be willing to pay anything because what you have to offer is so valuable, so awesome, and above and beyond. Now, realistically, that's not always the case as much as we want it to be. That's why we thought that asking the question regarding perceived value was so important, and asking specifically about the price. In terms of comparing it to the overall performance score, it's not exactly apples to apples, because the overall performance score is a culmination of everything that's on the survey on a 5-point scale. So it averages out together on that 1,000-point scale. I know it's a little confusing, but a perfect 5, for example, would equate to a perfect 1,000. Whereas the perceived value question, that's only on that 1 to 5 scale. It's only one question, one part of the experience that's being rated. So I wouldn't necessarily put those apples to apples to each other, but I really think that overall performance score is probably higher because it doesn't ask directly about price. I mean, there's not one question calculated in the overall performance score that relates back to price. And regardless if you have a price sensitive family or not, people pay attention to the price of things, and that's just life. And how, especially someone who going into this survey without knowledge of surveys in general, and they're just answering the questions the way they're supposed to be doing, right? So I personally think that that's why there's a big difference between the two, and then our business consultants actually draw that back because we also have a total value index score, which does compare overall performance score apples to apples. They're both on that 1,000-point scale, and they really dive in and analysis specifically for your business, what holes there might be, especially in comparison to the market that you're in. If you have families that are shopping, especially for direct cremation, where they don't have specifically a relationship with your funeral home, they're just kind of looking for the easiest option. They really work well with you. So highly recommend reaching out to our consultants on that.
So if funeral homes are hearing this from their data, how should they address this gap between the overall performance and the perceived value with that?
Yeah, I think continuing to educate families on pricing is really important. Speaking as someone who I just lost a loved one last year, my grandfather died, and he's the full patriarch of our family, and it was a very big loss for myself, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, but it was also the real first big loss that we have had as a group. I mean, I've lost friends and things like that, but dealing with a member of your family that's so close to you, we went into it, and I mean, my aunt reached out to me because I have the knowledge of the profession, but she was like, hey, what should I be paying for this? Is this outrageous? Is this what's expected? So I was able to help my family because of my knowledge of the profession. But when you're speaking to a family directly and they've never had a loss of a loved one before, you kind of want to really educate them through the process of pricing and giving them those options of, okay, good, better, best, and seeing what kind of category they fall into, what is most meaningful to them. I think having those conversations and not just skimming over something because it's uncomfortable, because talking about pricing, talking about money can be uncomfortable, but having those conversations with your families is really an important thing. So that's what I would recommend in order to increase your perceived value, because obviously the service that is being given by funeral directors is already out of this world. I mean, one of the cool things that, sorry, I'm going on a little bit long with this question, but one of the things that Performance Tracker does is analyze the arranger performance as an individual. There's a whole section of the survey that relates back to the funeral director. And that shows you like pretty granular details of where there are gaps in that individual funeral director's performance. And I'm working with your teams and just working to improve your own performance over time. I think that those are really good areas of increasing that perceived value.
Now let's shift gears and talk about the Net Promoter Score, which means how likely families are to recommend the funeral home. The data tells a fascinating story here that the NPS data shows that families who found funeral homes through TV, social media, or seminars, or different events scored the highest, 92 to 94, while those choosing based on convenience, location score, that was about 88.4. What's the story behind those numbers?
Yeah, so I love that you asked me about this one because I thought that was super interesting as well. Diving into it with our consultants, because we actually did that at the beginning of this year when we released this Trends and Insights report. We looked into this, and so we found that consumers tend to adhere to the social impression that a business has made in the public eye. So really, I'm going to go back to the reputation that they've created for themselves. We can infer from that funeral homes who are actively investing in their marketing tactics through TV or social media, or having a presence in the community with events and seminars, maybe on grief support or whatever it might be, that's going to affect the public perception of that business. So without knowing it, a family could subconsciously come into a funeral home or an experience with a business and already have a perceived notion of how something should go, how it's going to go. They might already have that likelihood to recommend in their head of like, as long as nothing drastically awful goes wrong with my experience, I'm going to rate this place a 10. They're a very reputable place, and we know that. Whereas, finding and choosing a funeral home that's based on that convenient location piece, that could really just be like someone is shopping around for the pricing. They wanted to find a place that's close or that's most centrally located. You're not necessarily going to go into that with a perceived notion about that business before having your own experience with them. So they don't have that reputation or the social influence that could lead a family to judge a little bit more harshly if there's no established pre-perception going into it. So you're really going to take it from your own experience. You're going to think, hey, how do I think a funeral service should have gone, instead of reading online and seeing what people are saying about businesses. So I really think that that's a major factor there.
Now, there's another interesting pattern, and I hope you're as excited for this next question as you were the last one. Traditional burial services show an NPS score of 87.3, while cremation with memorial services scored 90.2. Why do you think families who choose cremation report higher satisfaction?
I think that it comes down to pricing. If I'm going to be completely honest, I think that's a big reason why cremation with memorial is starting to steamroll traditional burial a little bit in terms of volume, in terms of satisfaction, like what you're saying. That 3%, it's not super impactful, but it's definitely a trend to keep an eye on over the years and see how it goes. But I think that because a family with a cremation with memorial, they got a better price for it than what they got the better instead of the best on that good, better, best scale. And they also didn't necessarily pour everything into it with the planning. It depends. I think that the event itself is a little bit less traditional, less formal. So they're gonna grade you a little less harshly, in my opinion. And I think it does come back to the price that was paid too. So I found that interesting. I'm excited to see what it comes out to be this year when we analyze the data for 2025.
What can our traditional service providers learn from the progressive cremation service providers, particularly those who operate the successful online cremation businesses?
Yeah, so I mean, convenience of online cremation, obviously. As a millennial, I have a lot of introverted friends who do not like to even answer the door for their DoorDash order, let alone go in and manage a whole case. I think the pandemic really affected this as well, with just everyone's notion that they don't need to be in person in order to get something done. So just the convenience of doing it online, and I think the finances do affect decisions in today's world and economy. I mean, younger generations like millennials or Gen Z are not in as nearly of a strong place as Gen X and baby boomers were at the age that millennials and Gen Z are right now. I mean, buying a house is not what it used to be in comparison to salary. And I think that trend is definitely embedded in the younger generation's mind. There's also, a factor of, is there a generational plan in place? Was there any pre-need done? Were your parents prepared? Were your grandparents prepared for their death? And did they kind of move that forward? I think all of those things are factors in deciding whether or not you're going to go with, a traditional service versus that lower cost online cremation. I think that one other thing I want to say with this too, on the cemetery side, obviously that's going to be very heritage based. And I don't know about you, Lacy, because you have more knowledge of cemetery, I believe, than I do. But in general, I don't know a lot of younger generations that are starting a family plot necessarily. That new business is getting even harder and harder to find, not just having that heritage business. So on the cemetery side, I think that that's something to consider as well. And obviously, cremation is on the funeral side, but it affects it on the cemetery side for obviously a place to place your loved one.
Well, let's talk about pre-need, because I know we have several pre-arrangement specialists and professionals joining us today. Pre-need fulfillment shows significantly lower NPS scores compared to at-need services. It's 81.2 versus 87.8 for burial. Given that pre-need families have had time to plan and should theoretically be more satisfied, why do you think that gap exists?
I mean, I thought a lot about this question. I think that because pre-need families are planners like me. I'm an ex-event planner, current project manager. I'm very type A. I think that I'm gonna judge a service or an interaction with a business a little bit more harshly than if I were to just do it offhand, or not offhand. Obviously, it's a very important thing that you're doing, regardless of when you decide to make the plans for arrangement. But I think that if you're having to do it last minute, maybe there was a sudden death, or like I said earlier, when you haven't lost a loved one before, I think that you're probably going to be a little more like clouded in your judgment than if you were, analyzing something from a pre-need perspective of, okay, we've had this plan for a long time. Let's see, let's see how this is gonna go. And you're probably gonna judge that a little bit more harshly. Your expectations are gonna be a little bit higher for how it should go. I don't know that this is the case because I don't come from funeral industry, and I'm not the consultant. As much as I love working for Johnson Consulting Group and supporting our business consulting team, I personally don't have the knowledge of funeral. But what I will say is that I think that a lot of times, a funeral director or a cemetery service counselor can get, again, a little bit complacent with taking the repeat business for granted, I guess. So you're like, okay, well, it's a pre-need fulfillment. They didn't come in. They've been signed with us forever. Maybe you're not going to serve them as well, and that might not even be a conscious decision. But definitely keeping in mind that just because someone planned for pre-need doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same amount of service that an at-need family would get.
Now, we've talked about what keeps funeral home owners up at night. Let's talk about what makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that is the previously served accounts for 26 to 48% of case origination, depending on the case type. Yet these families score lower in NPS than those who found the funeral home through online reviews or recommendations. What does this tell us about the danger of taking repeat business for granted?
I mean, it really stems off of the last answer I gave. You really ordered these perfectly, Lacy. But online review-driven families are going to hold the home to a higher standard. Absolutely. They have all of the reviews to go off of. If you're someone who visits online reviews and looks those up, you're probably more likely going to be someone who fills out an online review as well. So I think that someone who's going in to a service with preconceived notions based on, a reputation is definitely going to be something that has a lot of impact to your scores. Repeat business does not equal loyalty necessarily. So, sometimes it's going to be about convenience, and someone's going to be like, okay, we had a funeral, it went okay. I don't really remember because my mom died and it was a blackout moment, but let's just go with them again for the loss of dad, kind of a thing. So most previously served families are going to be returning because, the home handled a prior death, as we know, and we know that from our data. And then the records and information are already on file. So it's just, going to be a more seamless process for the family. They don't have to start over from scratch. And then it's going to feel overall less stressful to return to what feels familiar. And I think that those things are really going to impact whether or not a family is going to go back to a business, and they should not receive less of a service just because they've already been served by you. So it's a little bit similar to the last question answer that I gave.
That's a wake-up call for sure, no pun intended, on what Google or online review families are thinking. On a more positive note, Google review conversion rates have climbed from 15.8% in January to 22.1% in December of 2024. What's driving that increase?
Awareness of the marketing strategy and angle for the legacy generations that are not as tech savvy, not as they're not thinking top of mind, like, okay, my Google review is really going to affect how families find me, because forever it's been previously served and recommended by. And yes, those are still the largest forms of finding it. But like you said, 15.8% to 22.1%, that's a huge jump. So, and that's just in the span of 1 year. So this year's report is going to be super interesting to see how far up it's gone even since then. But there are companies too that are specifically focusing on SEO solutions for their clients. So like Performance Tracker, for example, we have that Google Promote feature. We work with clients who also have Precoa handling Google reviews for them in managing their search engine optimization. I know Batesville does stuff like that too. So there's a lot of companies out there that are focusing on solutions specifically for it. And then overall, just like the increase of online review lead sourcing, I think that consumers in general, they go online. Like if you have a question, what are you going to do? You're going to type into Google on your phone and get an answer in 5 seconds. So less than that. But I think it's just the modern times are catching up to the funeral profession. It's something I'm excited for, and I know like a lot of younger generations of funeral homeowners are excited for it as well.
Now let's talk about the biggest lead generator. I need a drum roll, please, Maddie. The report shows that 9,692 grief support leads are generated. That's the highest lead category. How are funeral homes actually converting these grief support inquiries into pre-need arrangements or other revenue opportunities?
Right. I was impressed with that as well. I love that. I love that it's grief support and not pre-need. And I'll tell you why, because you can convert a lot of these grief support opportunities into pre-need opportunities. And that can be either with, your funeral directors contacting the families about them, or third-party aftercare specialists. They serve first and guide later kind of a thing. We have a product at J3 Tech Solutions called SMS Aftercare, and it's a text messaging program that you can use with families, continue to build that relationship with them post-service. You can ask them to complete a Google review. You can ask them, if they would like to help plan future arrangements and everything like that, and keeping that relationship alive. One of the other things that I've seen our clients do is they'll build like a grief email nurture sequence together. So they'll create a whole campaign of emails around grief support, and that's going to be sent directly to those who inquired about grief support on their survey. So that's kind of a nice a passive way to approach grief support leads, and then it could lead to more, especially as they reach back out to you and seeing those marketing campaigns. Another set of grief support tools that are going to lead to pre-need is there's tools that are designed to help families. And I think that every funeral home operator on this call is definitely thinking like, we kind of quietly already guide families towards pre-planning. And you can do that with like Complete My Wishes workbooks or estate and benefits checklists. There's veteran benefits assistance, online memorial planning tools, and then anniversary texts and reminders and emails. So that's all of that can be done through our SMS Aftercare program, and by creating your own text message campaigns, but certainly working with a third-party provider is going to help boost that a little bit for you.
I want us to explore broader industry trends now, and looking at the case mix data, direct cremation dominates at 69.7% of all cremations. However, families who choose traditional cremation or cremation with memorial services report higher satisfaction. How can funeral homes ethically guide price-sensitive families towards services that may provide better emotional value?
Yeah, one of the things that the consultants say to me a lot on this is that price-sensitive families don't reject ceremony; they fear the financial burden. So it's not that they don't want that memorial service and they don't want to remember their loved one in that kind of more formal way. It's just they don't want to have to pay as much and have that burden weigh on them. So I think that some ethically responsible ways, as you mentioned, of kind of leaning families toward a memorial service, just presenting itemized packaging a little bit different. You can say, instead of, hey, this is what we offer, you can say, tell me more about your loved one. What's the most important thing to your family right now? Or how do you want to remember your loved one? I think that asking those open-ended questions, some might say it's a manipulative tool, but it works, I promise you. And it works not only in sales, but in customer service as well. And I know funeral directors are not focused on, selling necessarily. They're focused on working with their families and making sure their families are taken care of. Those are really sensitive ways that you can approach those conversations by asking the open-ended questions. Like what I said earlier too, presenting things in like that good, better, best options. Letting them know that the door is open to do a simple direct cremation, or you can get even more meaningful with an upgrade, like a viewing or gathering, without the interaction feeling sales driven.
The great thing about open-ended questions, it helps the family understand that the funeral director wants to get to know the loved one, wants to understand more about the relationship, and it's an action of care that is behind the heart of asking those open-ended questions to begin to build that relationship based on trust. And it can certainly make all of the difference in transitioning to talk to the family about their different choices. Now, price sensitivity is a hot topic, and I want to talk about that. It did decrease from 11.9% in 2021 to 8.1% in 2024 for burials, yet price sensitive families consistently score higher on perceived value. What explains this paradox?
I think intrinsically, consumers in general, not just families who have lost a loved one, but consumers in general associate the word value with price. And I think that's really unfortunate. I talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the call, but I know that when I hear something is of value, it's going to be a little bit different when I'm doing self-help stuff or when I'm going to buy a car. When you're going to buy something or purchase something, you automatically associate the word value with price. That's why we have the perceived value question on our survey. And I wrote it down here because I always butcher the wording of it, and the wording is very specific. It's how satisfied were you with the value of products and services you received based on the price you paid? So we do ask specifically about that price. And I think that just kind of solidifies, oh, this is about price. This is, what I should rate this on. So they got a better price. But the invert of that is that the expectations are going to be a little bit lower or more realistic for the price sensitive families. So if someone goes above and beyond, and this really speaks to the impact that funeral directors have on families, the price sensitive family could have purchased something that's like bare minimum, just trying to get in and out and with as little financial burden as possible. But then they had such an above and beyond experience with the staff that they work with, they're going to make that known in their survey responses. So if it could be the same level of service that a traditional burial family is receiving, but they're going to have higher expectations going into it of, okay, this is the kind of service that I should be receiving. I'm not going to be as surprised as someone who, purchased the bare minimum, but then they're still receiving that amazing treatment from the funeral directors. So I think that's the biggest impact or explanation, I should say, for that paradox.
And Taylor, I know one of your favorite books is The Customer Service Revolution by John DeJulius. What are some of your top takeaways that would be beneficial for a funeral home provider to consider?
So there's two, because I couldn't narrow it down to just one, and I I love this book. I was given this book when I came into Johnson Consulting Group. And that's because, Johnson Consulting in itself is very customer driven. We do everything for our customers to make their lives easier. And that's our philosophy as a company. But our business consultants, our senior business consultants are both certified in the DeJulius. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's like the DeJulius like philosophy, and they are customer service professionals with DeJulius. So I've learned so much with working with them, and it's kind of just expanded on my knowledge that I had from hospitality before. But there's two things that really stand out to me from this book. One is create a culture of experience matters, not order takers. And I think that that's so it's specific for funeral industry, because you could easily just go in and be like, okay, this. But then when you're cultivating an experience for your families, you're really trying to get to know their loved one, connect with them on a personal level, and figure out what's going to be the best fit for them. That is so not an order taker. That is going so above and beyond in that case. So I think just empowering your staff, if you're a manager or an owner, empowering your staff to create those emotional moments, not getting stuck on just arranging a service, but, really anticipating needs and like I said, connecting and getting to know the family. And then obviously expressing that compassion and the empathy for grieving families, I think is really impactful as well. And that's a way that you can make that experience and not just take an order. Then I would say as well is that making the experience so exceptional that the price becomes less relevant. That's something I say in every single one of my trainings, is that in the ideal world, the price wouldn't matter as long as they have a great experience. That value is there. But when experience is extraordinary, price is no longer a deciding factor. And that's one of his philosophies, John DeJulius. It's such a like a mouthful saying the name. Sorry about that.
It's a great book, but those are awesome principles to share with our audience today. And this has been incredibly insightful. And I want to invite you back in 2026 to talk about the trend report next year, if that's okay. We hope our audience has taken away today that customer surveys, they are not just report cards. They are strategic tools that can transform a funeral home business. And we've discussed data that can reveal opportunities to strengthen customer relationships and, of course, identify the silent detractors before they damage the reputation, and optimize the funeral home service mix to ultimately drive both satisfaction and profitability. I encourage everyone who has joined us today to look at your own performance tracker X data through the lens of what Taylor has shared today. Look for those gaps between overall performance and perceived value. And thank you again, Taylor, for sharing your experience with us. And where can they catch you for Tea Time with Taylor?
So my next Tea Time with Taylor is coming up this Tuesday because of Thanksgiving this month. We got a little, weird with our schedule, but typically it is at the end of the month. It's the last Thursday of every month. It's only a half hour long, so it's really not too bad of a time dedication. And even if you just register for it, you'll receive the recorded copy. So if you can't join live, highly recommend checking out those links that get sent to you from YouTube, or you can go into your dashboard if you're a current Performance Tracker X client under your support tab and scroll to the bottom, and all of our archive of those webinars is available for you. So check it out. Please come.
Yep, it's a great opportunity to dive deeper into these topics. And I want to check in with Maddie to see if we have any questions that have come through on the chat feature.
Absolutely, Lacy. I also made a note from earlier that to make sure we have a drum roll sound effect available for you.
Thank you.
Love that.
So we do have a question here. Let's talk about AI. What are some ways to use AI tools to enhance survey data analysis? And what are some concerns about using AI with potential personal data?
Yeah. So one of the things that we are currently developing, without giving too much away, is AI analysis on open-ended comments that are left on the survey. So being able to do that within your dashboard or performance tracker and through the Medallia software is really important, because all of that data is already secure. You're not just throwing all of your data results into ChatGPT, and trust me, that stuff is recorded. AI takes it and they give that information to other people. So don't give away your data. Protect your data, and we are coming out with features on that next year. So I would say, honestly, as much as it pains me to say wait, I would say wait for the proper tools to come about. Or if you're working with another company, or you have tools of your own that you know are private, that you know the security is there, then you can definitely use AI for those open-ended comments. Even for analyzing some of your actual performance metrics, you can come up with, I'm sure AI could generate a lot of information that is similar to the trends and insights report that we create. But definitely just make sure your data is safe. That's the biggest thing.
Awesome. Yes. Do not give your data away, and more to come with PTX and JCG. So, well, another thing that I wanted to reference, I know that we talked about the John DeJulius book. We actually have a spinning wheel going right now. Everybody who is attending currently has the opportunity, another drum roll effect here, to win a copy. Let's go and spin the wheel, see who's getting one. Oh, and let me share my screen too, so that everybody else can get the same joy of watching the wheel spin here. Hang on. Ba-ba-da-ba. All righty, here we go. Click to spin. All right, woohoo, we got a winner. Tom Brantoni's. Sorry if I butchered your name. You are getting a copy of the John DeJulius book. Be on the lookout. Thank you, guys. I will pass it on over to Lacy. Yes, there she goes, showing it off. For any final comments.
Thank you, Maddie. And I want everyone to save the date for our next Johnson Consulting conversation on December the 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be joined by Rich Darby, founder of Operation Honor Guard, for what promises to be a powerful conversation about serving our nation's veterans with the honor and dignity they deserve. You won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Lacy with Johnson Consulting Group. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Taylor, for joining us today. And remember, your data is speaking to you. Are you listening? Thanks, Maddie. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lacy. Thanks, Maddie.
Bye, everyone.